2026 is finally upon us, and as I do at the start of pretty much every year, I find myself thinking about all of the possibilities that lie ahead on January 1st. With 365 new days to meet our goals and the seed of starting fresh planted firmly in the ground, this is a feeling of hope for all that is to come. If you want to take advantage of this new year energy, then you're in the right place. In today's episode, we are going to talk all about finding a new direction for your life in the year ahead without starting completely from scratch. We'll talk through choosing a word for the year, setting goals, creating a list of ins and outs, and more. And I have to say, it feels good to be back recording. I was able to batch record a bunch of episodes before the end of the year, so it's actually been a little while for me. It almost feels a little rusty to be sitting here at the microphone talking to you all. If you're listening to this the day it comes out, let me be one of the first to wish you a happy new year. I hope everyone had a relaxing and healthy holiday. I was able to see lots of family and even some friends. We just stayed local in New Jersey this year, and it was a really restful and restorative time, but I'm already itching to get back to work. Case in point being that I'm recording this episode on December 30th, and it amazingly comes out on January 1st. Totally unplanned, just a happy coincidence of a Thursday podcast publishing schedule, but I'm excited to be back with you all here today to talk about doing a little rebrand for 2026. Before we get into that, though, as we do at the start of every episode, we have to do a little create and consume. So if you are a newer podcast listener, first of all, hello, nice to meet you. The podcast you're listening to is called Create and Consume, and this is a little segment we do at the beginning of each episode where I share something that I've been creating and consuming in the last week. And you guys can always let me know what you are creating and consuming as well. You can leave a little comment if you're listening on Spotify or watching on YouTube. You can send an email to the podcast email. All of the ways to get in touch are always in the show notes, but I like for this to be a conversation, even though I understand that a podcast is usually a one-way conversation and you're just happily listening in on the other end. Maybe you're driving somewhere, maybe you're cleaning, maybe you are folding laundry, but feel free to talk back to me whenever you want. So as far as what I've been creating in the past week, I've actually, like I said, tried to plan ahead to take some time off, but something that is new since we last spoke back in December is the Glow Up series, which is a series of 4 videos that I've published on my YouTube channel in the last month, basically designed to help you show up for 2026 as your best self. And I believe all 4 episodes should be out by now. If episode 4 is not up for some reason, it will be coming up quite shortly, possibly today or even tomorrow. But I basically wanted to do this series because I feel like my start of year content is typically pretty popular on YouTube. Everyone seems to like doing a little rebrand or a refresh or auditing their life or checking in on goals. And it's easy to see why. Like I said, that new year energy is kind of contagious, and it's good to take advantage of it when you feel like you're in the mood to actually set your intentions, set your goals, and create new routines for yourself headed into the new year. So just in case you missed it or you're not subscribed to me on YouTube, like I said, the Glow Up series is 4 episodes. So the first episode was all about creating a vision board and setting your goals for the year. The second episode was all about confidence tips, really how to utilize fashion and beauty to show up as your best self. Episode 3 was about 10 life-changing daily habits that have made me a more motivated, more productive, and more grounded person. And episode 4, like I said, hopefully it's live by the time you guys are listening, is a creative winter morning routine. So you can start your days on a positive note, even when it is dark, dreary, and possibly even snowing out. I will leave a link to the Glow Up series in the show notes, just in case you guys want to go check it out. And as far as what I've been consuming in this past week, I basically inhaled, as I usually do, the latest season of Emily in Paris. So this was season 5. She starts out in Rome, which I absolutely loved, that little detour and plot twist, because I feel like there are only so many recycled storylines you can go through if you just stay in Paris, which again, please let them make 1 million seasons of this show. Like honestly, I would watch it pretty much even if she just stayed within the same like 6 square block radius of her apartment. But all of that to say, I am fully caught up now. I enjoyed the detour to Rome, and I am curious to see what happens. I will say that they did actually get me with one little plot twist, one little switcheroo that I wasn't expecting, but I don't want to give any spoilers yet, just in case people have not had time to watch yet. I personally am still making my way through the second drop of the final season of Stranger Things because it dropped on Christmas, but it's been busy since then. Like, I did not have time on Christmas to watch all of the new episodes. So I'm also curious to see how that ends. I have no doubt we'll be talking about that next week when we do Create and Consume. But I've actually been on a social media break for the last week. So one of my goals for the year was to take 3 full weeks off of social media. And I actually did a vlog for YouTube over the summer during my second week where I just was fully logged out of Instagram and TikTok. So if you're interested in seeing how I typically spend a more offline week in the life, I can link that in the show notes. But I really haven't been creating much else on the front of short form or anything like that. And I also haven't really been consuming any content. And I do have to say, it's been nice to give my brain a break, do a little bit of festive reading, just try to get some things checked off before the end of the year without the distraction of scrolling. But with that being said, let's get into planning out a little life rebrand for ourselves in 2026. And again, if you guys watch the Glow Up series, you'll see a lot more visual examples and get to see me go in depth on certain topics. But today I really just wanted to do like a top level overview, some things that I think are helpful to think about at the start of a new year to help set yourself up for success. Give yourself a clear vision on what you really want your year to look like, and just be able to move through your days with more confidence and less confusion. The very first thing that I like to do at the start of a new year is to choose a word for the upcoming year. And I've also heard of people who choose like a mantra. I've heard of people who choose a color or a symbol of some kind to kind of guide their year forward. But I do like choosing a word of the year. To me, it just provides a true sense of direction. It's something that I can circle back to if I'm feeling lost throughout the year. And it's just like one common denominator that I can always refer back to and make decisions off of throughout the year as well. It really becomes almost like this little mantra that you can repeat for yourself, and it can be related to any area of life that you want. It could be something general, it could be something that is more career oriented. It could be something for personal growth. It really is completely up to you. That's what I love about choosing a word of the year is it's such an individual and unique experience. I've actually been choosing a word of the year every year since 2021. So I thought we could do a little walk down memory lane and I'll share some of my previous words of the year in case you guys need any inspiration. In 2021, my word of the year was refine. In 2022, I chose build. In 2023, my word was amplify. 2024, my word was align. And in 2025, my word was enjoy. And there was plenty to enjoy about 2025, but I think I also threw myself off just a little bit because my previous other words of the year were a lot more career oriented. So suddenly to have the word enjoy thrown in there, maybe not like my most accurate choice that I've ever done in my life. Of my other previous words of the year, I loved the word refine. I feel like that really helped me like narrow down my focus and keep track of only what was most important and not worry about any external noise. And in 2024, my word was align. And I really tried to follow my gut and just say yes to things that felt like they made the most sense, that felt right, that felt like a good fit for me. And I felt like that applied outside of career as well. So yeah, last year's word just felt a little too swung in the other direction of fully a personal goal, whereas usually I find I pick a word for my career. But I feel like I found a good middle ground, a better balance for 2026. So I've decided my word for this year is going to be confidence. And I think this can apply to both career and personal life as well. I think that in terms of the personal side of things, confidence speaks to just being unapologetic, being really clear about what I want, setting the right boundaries, and obviously being nice to people, but also at the end of the day, still doing what's best for me and staying confident in decisions that I make. And then when it comes to work, I hope is the year that I am a lot more vocal about just everything, like my opinions, what I want, what I actually think about stuff, and not just catering to what I think people want to hear. And that's not always easy, especially when you have an audience or you're constantly sharing your life online. People tend to have opinions about things. But I think really just standing behind my own decisions, trusting my gut, and being really steadfast in how I feel. So that's how I'm viewing confidence and my word of the year going into 2026. And I also wanted to add that this year I tried to choose a word a little bit differently. So one thing that I did to kind of guide me in this decision is I actually went to ChatGPT, which I use quite frequently for work related purposes. And I said, based on what you know about me and my creator business, here are some of the things I struggled with this year. Here are some of the things I'm working towards next year. And here are all my previous words of the year. So, like, please don't repeat any of them. But, like, what would you suggest as a word for me for next year? And confidence was actually one of the words that came up. But the more I thought about it and sat with it, the more I found my own reasons as to why it was such a perfect fit and why it made sense for me. So if you're ever struggling on the brainstorming front, I will say that ChatGPT is probably the best with that. Like, it's just literally a boundless, infinite list of ideas, and you can always ask it to refine the angles, to give you more options, to give you fewer options, to add in new information before it gives you suggestions. If you're ever stuck for brainstorming, it really is just like that chipper, never ending idea machine. That will always keep coming back to you with new ideas. So if you guys have already chosen a word for 2026, let me know what it is. Like I said, you can leave a comment, you can send me an email, DM us on Instagram at Create and Consume Pod. I always love hearing what other people choose as their words of the year because it serves as continuous inspiration for me too, to just hear what everyone else is working on and what everyone else's kind of North Star for the year really is. Now, if you're really looking to rebrand or refresh or do things differently in 2026, it may sound a little counterintuitive, but the next thing I'd really recommend doing is to look back on 2025, really sitting down and kind of just doing a mini audit of how your year went, things that went well, things that didn't go so well, but most importantly, really celebrating your wins from the previous year is such a great place to start to see what was working well and what you want to build on in the coming year. I truly believe that we are always hardest on ourselves, and if you ended this past year feeling like you did not get done what you wanted to do, or that you left some things on the table, or that there was still more that you could have pushed yourself towards, I get it, because I do feel in some ways that last year was that for me. I didn't necessarily hit as many of my goals as I was hoping to. There were a couple of things that I fell short on that I really would have loved to actually achieve this year. And I think I would have felt really proud had I been able to do those things. But my misses don't cancel out my wins. And I think it's so important to go back and try to find a win from each month of the year, or even just a handful, like your top 3 wins, because you didn't do nothing last year. Even if you're a little bit let down or a little bit like wishing that more had happened, you still did things. And I think that is so important to acknowledge and so worth celebrating. There was actually a trend on TikTok. I hope this isn't totally old news given that I've been off of TikTok for a week, but there was a trend going around on TikTok before the end of the year where friends were getting together and they had a cake and they had these little like toothpicks with pieces of paper attached to the end, and people would write down like their big accomplishment for the year, and then all their friends would clap for them and they would each put them into the cake. I will link a video example of this in the show notes. I thought this was such a cute idea. And I feel like doing the kind of by yourself version or virtual version of that is a really good mood booster and is a good way to remind yourself that you made progress, even if it didn't feel life changing, or even if, things look kind of similar to how they did at the start of last year, you still moved things forward, even if it was 1%, even if it was just little by little. And those things are worth celebrating. Or maybe, hopefully, you're sitting here listening to this and had the best year ever last year, and you just want this year to top it. And that's amazing too. I personally went back and looked through some of my big wins from 2025. I think the biggest one overall was that we bought and renovated our first home, which, even if I did nothing else last year, I feel like that in and of itself was a massive undertaking, something that I'm so proud of, something I've been thinking about for so long. And it feels really amazing to have that like officially checked off the list. And then a couple of my career wins from 2025. I got my blog into Mediavine. That was a big goal of mine for this year. I was featured on the YouTube blog. They actually did a whole feature on me. I can link it in the show notes. I don't think I talked about it on the podcast actually, but that was a really big moment for me to have, a company as big as YouTube acknowledge me and kind of spotlight me in that way. I also relaunched my digital course as Evergreen. Before I had it as a live launch where you could only sign up for the course if I was actively promoting the launch, and I would have like a limited window where you could sign up to get access to the course content. I ended up moving everything over to an evergreen model, meaning that people can sign up at any time. And my digital course is called the Influencer Income Accelerator. If you are looking to start and scale passive income streams as a content creator, you should definitely check it out. I will leave a link to the enrollment page in the show notes too, just because you can sign up at any time, like I mentioned, since I moved it over to Evergreen. And one other goal that just slipped through the cracks that made it in the last 48 hours of 2025 was that I have officially now trademarked the podcast. And I submitted this trademark in early 2024. Like, this is the longest process for any other trademark that I've filed so far for my business, but I'm really happy that it's here now. It's official. And I'm just so happy that that was one more thing I was able to add to my 2025 wins. So hopefully this has given you some ideas and inspiration for other things that you've done this year as well. And when it comes to setting goals that you want to achieve in 2026, I have a few key tips that I think will be helpful. The first tip is going to sound like glaringly obvious, so stick with me here for a minute, but set goals that you can actually achieve. And if you had told me this a few years ago, I probably would have been like, what are you talking about? Like, I can achieve any goal as long as I try hard enough or as long as I want it badly enough. But one big system and criteria that I have found for goal setting over the last few years that's been a big game changer to me is setting SMART goals. And I say smart with air quotes if you're watching on YouTube. Basically, what I mean by that is to use the SMART goal criteria. SMART stands for specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time bound. If your goals check off most of these boxes in the SMART criteria, you're going to have a better chance of actually achieving them. What I personally like to do is to set a timer for like 10 minutes, put on some lo-fi instrumental music in the background as I brainstorm, and just jot down every single goal or every single idea that I have for the next year that comes to mind. Even if they're bad, write them down for now. And then when you're done with your brainstorm, then you can go in and ask yourself if the goals meet the SMART criteria. So last year, like I mentioned, one of my goals was to get my blog into the Mediavine ad network. So that was specific. I wanted my blog to not just qualify for any ad network, but to qualify for Mediavine. It was measurable because Mediavine has certain thresholds and guidelines for who they accept as publishers. You have to hit a certain number of page views per month. So I knew exactly what I was aiming for. It was achievable because I was already partway towards building up my sessions to what would qualify me for the ad network. I'd been blogging for a long time, and I was already in their program called Journey, which is basically like a junior program of the Mediavine ad network. So I already had been accepted to that. That's what made me think it was achievable and also realistic. And the goal was time bound because I wanted to accomplish it in 2025, and I was able to do that. So that's one example of how you can break down a SMART goal and make sure that it's something that you can physically achieve, that makes sense, and that you're giving yourself a specific time window to accomplish it in. And once you have your list of goals for the year that have met your SMART goal criteria, then you can start to work backwards and think about actions you can do to work towards those goals. So again, for me, if I'm talking about getting my blog into Mediavine, one of the actions that I wanted to make sure I was doing was publishing weekly blog posts so that I continuously had new, fresh content and they would see that I'm an active publisher. And with each new blog post I wrote, I was hoping to reach a higher number of readers. I also ended up outsourcing a little bit with my blog I believe I started in 2024, but I continued it into 2025, where I hired a company called Influencer SEO to basically go in and optimize 8 blog posts a month for me. So they do a ton of work on the back end that has to do with metadata, analytics, tags, fonts and headers, really all the back end stuff that you don't see. And they go in and optimize all of my posts so that they are as search engine friendly as they can be. That has definitely given me a boost in traffic and just been a lot of work that I don't personally have to do on the back end. I can just outsource, which is really great. So, since I made sure that I was covered on the back end of things by hiring some help there and also publishing consistent blog posts, one day I got the email from Journey that said, "Hey, we think you're ready to graduate to Mediavine." And that's how I was able to achieve that goal last year. And I personally find it really helpful to distribute goals, like spread them out depending on different quarters and months of the year. Because, at least for me, when I think about like my business as a content creator, my world is very seasonal. And maybe you feel this way too with your work or personal goals, where I don't know, even for personal goals, I am so much more motivated to work out and like have a great workout month in like August versus in December. I'm like barely pedaling on the Peloton and I have Gilmore Girls on instead of an actual class from a Peloton instructor. And then to give a work example, even if I had a goal like Mediavine on my list, that might be something that I choose to prioritize in Q3 when spring summer brand partnerships have kind of quieted down and a lot of companies or brands will take some time off over July and August, and then they kind of come back full throttle in September and October when we head into holiday. So the third quarter of the year and the first quarter of the year for me are typically better times to focus on internal projects or goals that are more within my control, when the second quarter of the year and the fourth quarter of the year tend to be busier with client work. So that's one way you can think about how to schedule out your goals throughout the year. I personally always find it helpful to have no more than 3 quarterly goals that you're focused on so that you can actually dedicate your time and attention to them. And one other tip or thing to keep in mind, and again, this is coming from my perspective as a self employed creator, but for me, I like to spend about 70% of my work week working towards my goals, but I still try to leave about 30% of the week free to deal with all of the other admin things. So that could be replying to emails, replying to comments and messages, making sure that my LTK and Amazon storefront links are up to date, reaching out to brands, basically just like catching up on all of the back end things that keep my business running. So you can take that and think about it in your day to day as well. Maybe you have a creative side hustle. So if you have goals that you're working towards and you're able to work in the evenings from 7 to 9 p.m., you could pick 3 of those days to focus on your big picture goals and designate a day and a half or 2 of those days to just catch up on your admin tasks. And if you guys are more visual when it comes to goal setting and you want to see me personally go step by step through the whole process of goal setting, that is in episode 1 of the Glow Up series that I mentioned earlier in this episode. So I will link that specific episode in the show notes in case you actually want to circle back later, do some goal setting and like do it alongside me, because I planned out all my goals for 2026 and vlogged the whole thing so you guys can watch along and basically do exactly what I did. And I also want to add, I used to be someone who would just set career goals for the year, and I have enjoyed setting personal goals for the year as well. So I would also recommend distinguishing some of your goals based on whether they are more focused on work and your ambitions and your career, or whether they are more personal goals, whether they're related to family or your home life, or just things that you want to work on from a self-development perspective too. Even if you come up with a top 3 goals for work and a top 3 goals for your personal life, I think that is a great starting point for the new year. And you can always add on more later and give yourself room for flexibility, because sometimes things change unexpectedly. You may have buy a home on your goal list, but you may not have renovate a home on your goal list. And so you might want to be able to have a little flexibility there to add in things that you weren't initially accounting for, speaking from personal experience. And just to run you through some of my top goals for next year, I would say my top 3 career goals are to grow my YouTube channel to 100,000 subscribers by the end of the year, And I want to do that by testing new formats, doubling down on what's already working, and asking my audience for more feedback throughout my videos. I really want to furnish my home office. If you're watching on YouTube, there's basically nothing in here right now. I really want to furnish this home office and transform it into a functional content studio so I can level up the podcast, so that I can film more short form content in here easily and just continue to elevate my content. And I also want to continue to be seen as an expert in my field. So I'm interested in booking more press opportunities, speaking engagements, being quoted as an expert in publications, maybe even being on TV or podcasts. So I want to put myself out there more like that and figure out how I can maybe market myself also on like LinkedIn or Threads to be in a position where if someone does need, like a style expert for a TV segment or something, that they would consider me. And then my top 3 personal goals for 2026 are to take a big international trip with Andrew. I am kind of craving this right now. It's been 2 years now since we did New Zealand and Fiji for our honeymoon, and I'm ready to go somewhere again. I'm ready to go somewhere big. Another goal is to volunteer with PanCan again for Purple Stride, which is a walk to end pancreatic cancer. And another goal is to read 25 books. That's a goal that I set and met in 2025. Or should I make it read 26 books for 2026? Yeah, maybe I'll change it. Make it one more than last year, right? Why not? Okay, another thing that I think is really fun to do if you are rebranding your life for the next year are to create an ins and outs list for the upcoming year. And I'm going to share mine with you today for some inspiration. And what I like about this is it's just so personal to you. It really has to do with what you're prioritizing and everything. Not everyone is going to have the same lists. There are going to be things on someone else's out list that are like at the top of your in list. And you can even make this like a cute little Canva graphic. You could just save it as a note on your phone. And similar to Word of the Year, it's something that you can always turn back to or always return to if you're feeling lost throughout the year or like you're looking for some direction. It's just a really fun way to shape what you want to prioritize and how you want things to look. Okay, my first in for 2026, early dinner reservations. I don't know if it is just being 31 now, but the thought of going out to dinner at like 8 p.m., it just is like an immediate no in the back of my head. It's just too late in my head. It creates a whole domino effect of other things. Like if I'm not eating till this time, I have to eat lunch later. I have to plan to be out later. There's less public transit, later in the night, especially if that means I'm going out in the city and then coming back to Hoboken. Just kind of creates this whole other chain reaction. So unless it's like someone's birthday or some specialty occasion, or that was the only time we could get, I really don't want a late dinner reservation. I love an early dinner reservation, especially in the winter months here. I feel like Andrew and I are not mad at all if we book a 5:30 reservation and we're back home by like 8, just hanging out watching a movie. That's personally where my mind is at. So if you don't want the 5:30 reservation, I will scoop that on up. I will be there at 5:30 with a drink in my hand and an appetizer in the table, and I will be home and in my comfy clothes by 8 p.m. Okay, my next in for the year is quality over quantity, and I think this can apply to so many different areas. It could be friendship, it could be clothing, it could be what's on your schedule. Also, I used to be someone who would totally overbook my schedule and say yes to everything just because I wanted to please everybody. And I'm not like that anymore. One quality plan per week, like one night out with a friend or one work event or one thing, is so much better to me than going to a bunch of random things that I don't care about or that I don't feel like I need to prioritize. Okay, another in for the year. I wasn't quite sure what to call this, but I feel like I must have seen someone online refer to it as this. So I wrote down analog hobbies. And by that, I mean reading, watercolors, baking. It's almost like reverting back to being in like a home economics class or something. I don't know what is going on that's making me crave stuff like that personally, but I'm here for it. I love sitting down and reading. The fact that I was able to read 25 books this year compared to a few years ago when I was not reading at all, basically, is a major thing. And by the way, if you guys want to get back into reading, I believe it's episode 15 of the podcast is called In My Reading Era, where I do share some tips for how to get back into a reading routine if you find you've fallen out of it. So if that's something you want to do this coming year, I will leave that link in the show notes so you can go listen to that episode next. And yeah, watercoloring is another thing that I first tried during my offline week over the summer. I truthfully would love to do it again. I actually currently don't know where my watercolors are because we moved a few months ago, and that's one of the things that was like, I wonder where that is. I will find it later, and then later has never come. So I actually need to go dig them out because I really enjoy doing that. It's such a nice way to unwind. I can listen to music. I don't have to be looking at a screen. And I even feel that way about baking or cooking. I would say probably more so cooking for me, just out of necessity, because like we need to eat dinner. But even baking, people getting into their sourdough eras, people getting into making cookies, and even, just expanding all of that and giving it to their friends and family. I think that is so much fun. Needlepoint has also been a really big one that I've seen on TikTok. I don't know that that's the one for me, just because I could see myself being obsessed with it for like one day and then immediately giving it up the next day. So I will continue to just, take in that content personally, but I'm not actually going to be out here needlepointing if I had to guess. Social media breaks is on here. Obviously, I've talked about this a couple times throughout this episode already, but like actually logging off, even just for a weekend, even for a day or two, it can make such a big difference. And the way that I just feel so much more focused and so much less anxious should be studied. I'm sure it has been actually studied, but Okay, another in for next year is the side quest. And I really think two main things come to mind when I talk about a side quest. One is just like fun projects, and another is mini little weekend trips. So obviously, a side quest is something you're doing on the side of whatever your main quest is, whatever your main day to day is going to be. I really feel like one of the best ways to travel and see new places is actually to do a weekend trip. There are so many places that I have been to with Andrew or even by myself that I've just gone to for the weekend that I never would have gone to otherwise because I would think, oh, I don't really have the time to go there. I'm here to tell you right now, though, like Andrew and I have done Chicago in 48 hours. We've done Dallas in 48 hours. Yeah, don't discount a weekend trip, especially if you feel like you have limited PTO or maybe you and your partner work kind of different schedules and sometimes it's hard to line up on things. You really don't need a long time to go away and make an adventure out of it. And then I also put like fun projects on here. Again, maybe you actually start making sourdough and start selling it to your neighbors. Like that could be a fun little side quest to explore. Maybe you're starting an Etsy shop or a TikTok and you just want to kind of experiment and see how things go. Like, I am such a big proponent of people doing that, because I think it's really helpful to just experiment with different things and teach yourself new skills, especially in the age of digital content and the era of technology that we live in. And also, it's just a really fun way to like give your brain a break from all of the other day-to-day stuff that you always find yourself thinking about, which could be like your kid's schedule, or it could be your job, or it could be any number of things. Find a side quest for yourself in 2026. Okay, I put on here mindful consumption. I mean both physical and digital on this. So in terms of physical consumption, not accumulating random stuff for no good reason. I want to continue to like build my wardrobe and buy things intentionally, but I want to make sure that I'm buying quality, not quantity, like I already talked about. And as far as digital consumption goes, it is a great time of year to do a quick little digital detox, to go into your Instagram and unfollow 10 accounts that have just been annoying you lately, or you could even mute them if you don't want to unfollow. I believe I mentioned this in one of my videos for the Glow Up series on YouTube, but one big thing that I've done on Instagram that has definitely helped decrease the time that I spend on there, aside from taking a break, is I've muted almost everyone on stories, meaning that there's only ever at most like 30 or 40 stories for me to tap through versus just like an endless stream of stuff. And again, it's not because I don't care about the people I'm following. I obviously am still following them. It's just because I get so sucked in with the stories. That's where I typically go to keep up with people who I actually follow versus the content being showed on my For You page or my home page now on Instagram. So that has been super helpful. Okay, another in for next year is giving yourself grace. I'm so guilty of this too. Like, I am always so understanding of everyone else. I'm always giving a lot of grace to other people, and I'm not always giving as much grace to myself. So if you found that you've been particularly hard on yourself this year, or you just want to treat yourself the way you would treat a friend of yours if they were going through something or feeling like they weren't good enough or that they didn't accomplish a certain thing. Like, think about how you would talk to a friend, and that's how you should be talking to yourself. You should give yourself more grace and give yourself more credit. So that's definitely something I want to be doing more of this year. Okay, I put date nights are in. And again, this could be with your partner if you're in a relationship, or you could do a date night with yourself. I actually love a good solo date night as well. Andrew and his friends went out for a steak dinner a few weeks ago in December here, and I took it as an opportunity to order in ramen. I watched Emily in Paris, like just had a fun little night with myself. And I feel like if you can spend time alone with yourself and enjoy it, that's one of the best gifts in life because then you'll always have yourself to keep you company. And then I actually started a series on my Instagram and TikTok, which has basically been on accidental pause hiatus since the holidays. But one thing Andrew and I were doing was this thing called Date Night Passport, where we would go out and try a new cuisine of a different restaurant in the area. So either in Hoboken or New York or wherever we were. And we would kind of document our experience and try different cuisines that we weren't as familiar with or that we hadn't had in a really long time. And of course, I, turned it into content. But more than that, it was a really fun way for us to try different cuisines and different foods that we don't normally eat because obviously we have our favorites that we kind of rotate through. So I've really liked coming up with a fun little challenge like that. Okay, another in for 2026 is active listening. And I was talking to my dad and my friend's brother about this on Christmas Eve. We tend to listen to people, but as we are listening to them, we're already kind of crafting our response to the thing that we want to say next, or we're thinking about our own experience or what we would say if we were given the chance to speak. And sometimes you're so busy thinking about what you are going to say next that you're not actually really hearing the person as they're talking. And I just want to be, a better friend and a better listener and try to make sure that I am actively listening as much as I can. And if I catch myself crafting my response or spending more time in my own head than I am actually listening, that's something that I want to be more aware of, especially going into next year. I think it's great for your personal relationships. I think it's really helpful for work relationships as well. So that's one big thing that I want to take into next year too. I just wrote having a bedtime. I am so here for the bedtime, you guys. I am in bed lately no later than 9:45 most nights, and it is really something that helps keep my circadian rhythm intact. It's something that helps me really feel like, okay, the day is ending at this time, the day begins at this time. I think it's something that helps me fall asleep faster and stay asleep longer. I just love having a bedtime. And if I'm up past my bedtime, I probably don't have too many plans the next day because sleep and keeping my sleep routine grounded is very important to me now. Another in for me this upcoming year is creating intentional community. This could be local events. I consider my book club to be an intentional community because it's something I actively sought out and joined. Maybe even having or hosting like a monthly dinner party could be fun. I really just believe that fostering community IRL again is going to be at the forefront of a lot of people's minds for 2026 because it always feels so nice when you can get together in person with people, Also enjoying your rent/mortgage, like staying home sometimes, enjoying the space that you worked hard to get the money to pay for, whether you rent or whether you own. I really am, obviously, now that we're in our own space this year, we're in our own apartment. I love being here and I want to continue to nurture this space, really make it feel like home and enjoy my home. And that is something that I am always extremely grateful for and that I feel like I have been doing. And I just want to continue to, nest here and like settle in and really make this place feel like ours. This was never out, by the way, but I just wrote sunscreen every day. That's my last in for the year. Don't forget your sunscreen, guys. So important. Okay, and then some of my outs for the year, scrolling right when I wake up always sets the day off on the wrong foot, like when I'm consuming before I've even gotten up and had my coffee yet. Okay, another one is judging what makes other people happy. And I was thinking about this because a YouTuber who I follow who owns a home that's maybe like 20 minutes outside of the center of a city was talking about wanting to move downtown to be closer to the action of her city. Apparently she got a lot of backlash for it. And I was like, why? Like, if that's something that would make her happy to try living downtown when she's never done that before, even though she owns a house in basically the suburbs right now, like, why does that bother other people? When I shared that we ended up buying an apartment in Hoboken, I would say the response was pretty much overwhelmingly positive from what I saw. But for all I know, there could have been people who were saying, like, well, why would they do that? Why wouldn't they buy a house in the suburbs? It's like, because we didn't want to. Because we looked, we thought about it, and we said, you know what? We really like it here. We really want to stay here because it makes us happy. And that is a choice that we made. This other girl who wants to move, that's a choice that she makes. If that's what makes someone else happy, then good for them. Let them, don't worry about it. Another one is worrying about what you can't control. I mean, it's easier said than done, but truly, like 70% of the time when I'm worried about something, things end up completely fine. And it turns out I was worrying for no reason. So just don't cause yourself added stress or create super high expectations that people can't meet for you, because then it's out of your control. You can only control what you do, what your expectations are, how you feel. So that's definitely a big one. I also wrote down comparison. I do a lot of this with work, and I would really like to knock it off, so to speak. This past week that I've been off Instagram and TikTok, I have felt really good about all of the ideas I've had and the work I've been doing. And I feel like a big part of that is because I'm not comparing myself right now. So more of that next year. Also, on that note, overworking, really taking the time to take actual breaks to figure out where in your day you can find that time, even if it's just a few minutes for yourself every single day. Another one is spending energy where it isn't appreciated. I actually did a whole episode a few weeks ago all about how to actually protect your peace and set boundaries. So I can link that one in the show notes because I talk way more about that topic specifically in that episode. Spending energy where it isn't appreciated is even more draining than spending energy on things that make you happy or help other people or that truly go noticed. And yes, sometimes there are thankless tasks that just have to get done, but as Taylor Swift said recently, think of your energy as currency, and not everyone can afford the access to it. And the last thing on my out list is X, formerly known as Twitter. I am literally like about to delete my account, you guys. I actually am just over it. No one who I used to follow, especially from the writing and editorial world, seems to be active on there anymore. There is just so much like AI slop and misinformation. And I just don't feel like my audience is even there anymore. Plus, I have had a Twitter account for so long, like who knows what I was tweeting in the early days of it. I really feel like the best thing to do is just like shut the whole thing down and move on. I've definitely found a happy home in Threads for more text first posts, but I'm kind of over it. And to be able to delete like even just one platform, have one less thing that I'm logged into, one less thing that I'm worried about, is something that I'm not mad about. And next up in your 2026 planning, making a list of stuff you're looking forward to. I feel like getting excited and having an optimistic outlook on what's to come is one of the best ways for you to show up as your best self in a new year. So I personally like to break this into 3 different sections. The first one for what I'm looking forward to is travel plans. So write down any upcoming trips that you have or that you want to take. Maybe you haven't booked them yet, but you like want to manifest that you're taking them next year. A couple that I already know I'm doing personally that I'm excited for are going to the Catskills. I'm going to go to Florida with my dad for Mets spring training. We've never done anything like that before, so I'm super excited for that. I'm going to go to Boston in April, and I'm going to the Outer Banks in May for a wedding. Never been to the Outer Banks before, so that should be fun. Okay, the second one is any big milestones that are coming up. Are there any weddings in your family? Is someone running a marathon? Is someone moving? Did someone make a big career pivot? And even if, again, those things haven't manifested themselves yet, you could also think about things that you want to happen for yourself. Maybe you want to run a marathon. Maybe you want to make a career pivot. Writing down a list of those big milestones that you want to see come true in the next year can be a really fun way to look back and see if they actually come to life when it's December 31st, 2026. And then I also just wrote down the little things for what you're looking forward to. So for me, I feel like that's settling into our new home, trying more local coffee shops, getting to connect with more creators who live in the area. Again, not really life-changing or crazy milestones, but just things that I wake up every day and feel like I could encounter in my day-to-day life. I hope you found some inspiration and tips for how to rebrand for 2026 today. And before I let you guys go, I wanted to ask if you could let me know what you would like to see from the podcast in 2026 too. I will quickly tell you the top 5 episodes of the podcast from 2025. Number 1 was my history of the Met Gala episode. Number 2 was my Sephora sale shopping guide. Number 3 was actually just a summer favorites episode where I talked about beauty, fashion, food, all summer kind of seasonal things. Number 4 was the Hot Girls Guide to Surviving a Recession. I had a lot of fun planning that one. And then number 5 was the Fall Fashion Guide, 2025 Top Trends and Shopping List. So, based on the success of those episodes from this year, I already wrote down that I want to do a Spring 2026 Fashion Guide and also a Winter Favorites episode. So, hopefully, those will be coming up in a few weeks at the time you're listening. But if you guys have any other requests for episode topics or things you want to see, please feel free to reach out and let me know. And I'm excited to spend another year with you guys every Thursday. So thank you again for listening, and I'll talk to you in the next episode.